Hi, this is Chef Rick Moonen interviewing from my studio in Las Vegas. The name of my podcast is Ocean Raised. Here's where I get to dive deep into storytelling with the original gangsters of cuisine and the industry of the hospitality to find out where we started and what drives them. Today, I connect with a longtime friend, influencer, moderator, hospitality expert, major restaurant consultant, and the reason that I live in Las Vegas today. Today, we get to hear from Clark Wolf. In the late 1970s, Clark Wolf had a chance meeting that led to a lasting friendship with the legendary James Beard. He opened the San Francisco branch of the Oakville Grocery and retooled the iconic original Napa store. It started when Clark brought arugula to California in 1980 to sell at the legendary Oakville Grocery Store in San Fran, which he then ran until he moved to New York in 82. Since then, he became America's leading food and restaurant consultant with projects in Las Vegas, New York, Australia, Seaside, Florida, just to name a few. He's highly opinionated, confident, focused, and always fiercely energized. Wolf has, since 1999, lived part time in a 100-year-old logger's cabin in the redwoods of northwestern Sonoma County. The rest of the time, he lives in Manhattan and hits the roads for his clients. Excuse me for a second. I'm slowing down. I'm reading off my own teleprompter, and if you hadn't known that, okay? But I write this. Okay. He's written about artisanal cheese making in his 2008 book, America Cheeses, and currently writes for Forbes.com and LinkedIn as one of their influentials. In addition to his writing and consulting, Clark has hosted several television shows, and he's currently hosting the weekly show, radio show, as it's called At the Table with Clark Wolf. We'll hear more about that in a minute. Wolf has many awards, including introduction into the James Beard Foundation Who's Who of Food and Beverage in America. In addition to appearing on CBS Sunday Morning, he has appeared on CNN, the TV Food Network, known as the Network of TV or whatever it is now, they changed the names. As a regular contributor to CNBC's The Real Story, Wolf has been creator and host of two broadcast television series, The Food Show with Clark Wolf and The Big Dish. He is currently co-host of a radio program, At the Table with Wolf and Smothers. I want to know who Smothers is. Traveling extensively, he lectures and gives seminars to chefs, associations, food professionals, cooking students, and industry groups from California to Paris on food trends, specialty foods, restaurants, marketing, and restaurant real estate and finance. Wolf created a successful line of tableware. That is, you're going to know all these details about Clark by the time we're done that you can answer on trivia shows. So he's got his own tableware line that he utilized in hotels and restaurants around the country and sold in select retail environments, including Crate and Barrel. Clark Wolf was introduced into the Hall of Fame of James Beard Foundation. His company was formed in '86 to provide consulting services to food, restaurant, and hospitality business and to organizations requiring the services of such business. I could go on and wax poetic about all the amazing hotels and the names that are associated with him. Clark knows everybody. All right. I mean, he's a genius. And I just want to, since 1999, Clark Wolf Company has maintained offices in New York City and the Sonoma County. And today we get to find out where his journey began and what experiences and interests that drove him to become the consultant and hospitality expert that he is today. Clark, thank you so much. I love you dearly as a friend, and I respect you even more. And I need to hear from you. How did we get to here?
Well, Rick, I need a nap after that. I'll tell you, remembering all those things. And I will also tell you that since the pandemic, even though I've done a little bit of traveling and driving, I put everything in storage in New York. And after 38 years, I have been in my cabin in the Redwoods in northwestern Sonoma County for longer than I've been anywhere, excuse me, in my adult life. I mean, I've never, you know me, I never stay still. If it's more than 5 or 7 days, I start it's been a very interesting time, and there have been a lot of blessings. And one of them is to be able to take the time to talk to people like you. You know, you're the kind of person, you're one of those people who makes this something I want to be part of, because I started uh, I was a waiter on the railroad between Oakland and Chicago. Can you imagine me in a little monkey suit with a little bow tie and white shirt?
Actually, I could.
Yeah, right. And I got pretty good tips, and we got to Chicago and stayed out all night, and then 26-hour layover, then back to California, and then sometimes we double or triple out. I mean, I'm talking about you go home, you get new laundry, you get back on the train, and you go 2.5 days to Chicago again. And we worked 18 hours on and 6 hours off.
Okay, you're on the train a level. What are you doing at the stops?
Oh, depends. So when I was a waiter, so we would serve 600 people in 48 seats in under 2 hours at 90 miles an hour. And I learned how to balance. And I was mostly, very often, the only white person working. So for a little white kid, first generation American Jewish boy from Southern California, it was
ADD, obviously.
Oh my gosh, it was time to grow up. Yeah. And I would go get up in the morning and go to the Chicago Art Museum, or I would try to go to the pump room. I went to Marshall Fields and bought Frango mints. I mean, I was out there exploring because, this is life. And it was incredible. When I got back to San Francisco, I got a job opening a cheese and wine shop at the base of Nob Hill. There was a little sign in the window, manager wanted. I applied, and of course they went Chapter 11 the second week of my employment.
Yeah.
Rick, I had 35 cheeses and $200. And I ran that store for 2.5 years. I learned how. I got an MBA in survival. It was amazing.
Don't be humble. This is an iconic cheese shop to this day.
Well, it was there for over 20 years, 25 years, and it changed in little ways. But boy, when you have food in a community, it changes things, doesn't it? It really has an impact. So I thought, oh my gosh, I'm learning about business. I'm learning about food. I'm learning about stories. I'm learning about learning. And that's when I met Jim Beard. He walked in the door one day and said, I'm not even supposed to be in a shop like this. Do you have any Appenzeller or Morbier or Senectaire? And, we chatted. And a year later, I was hanging out with one of his assistants, John Philip Carroll. And John said, Mr. Beard remembers you and wants you to come up to dinner at the Stanford Court Hotel in Nob Hill in San Francisco. But don't be surprised if at 10 o'clock he says, I'm tired, go home. So, and you understand this, Rick, at 1:45 a.m., as we are having my second ever Glenlivet single malt scotch neat, John goes to the bathroom to wash his face or something, and Jim says, come on over tomorrow and we'll have breakfast and a good gossip. And, so when I opened the Oakville Grocery in San Francisco, I got a chance to go up to the Napa Valley before the Napa Valley was, it was the 70s, and the Napa Valley was just beginning to emerge out of post-prohibition and, the great tasting, and where the Napa wines and the Sonoma wines actually who won against the French wines.
The French, yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. So we had this store, and it was owned and backed by the late Joseph Phelps, who was, he was a construction guy from Denver who was a billionaire when that was a lot of money.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah, right. Good start today.
There you go. And he knew everybody and he could get everybody. And so I was this kid surrounded by people who were tasting. It was Mary Ann Cunningham, who wrote the Fannie Farmer cookbooks, and Alice Waters and Ruth Reichel and Elizabeth David from England. I mean, these amazing people. And I was just a kid going, ooh, what kind of ham is that? Ooh, what olive oil that tastes what? And I ended up opening the store, and when people would want something, when Alice Waters said, can you get capers in salt from Italy? I would say, I don't know. What should they be like? She explained it. And, within a number of weeks, I managed to find them, because why not? Right?
I mean, but let's put everything in perspective. There was no internet. There was no Amazon. This was like, you had to make phone calls and beg for another connection and another connection.
Yeah. It was really extraordinary, because I learned in the little cheese shop, because I knew nothing about cheese when I opened the cheese shop, that if I talked to my customers, I would be traveling all over the world. And when I got to Oakville, we did a couple of things. I thank you for asking it this way. I would stay on the phone with a distributor or a rep for an hour, just talking and asking and probing it. And they were so thrilled to have this 27-year-old kid asking questions and, giving a rep. And then we began to be a magnet, and people would come and drop off samples. And so suddenly my table was covered with samples every week. And on Thursdays, I would taste 100 things. I mean,
it's because you created relationships.
Yes.
Relationships. Yes. And that buds off to others. What people don't understand in business is it's people talking to people that make the successful connections and things blow up. And without that, and I'm afraid that somehow that doesn't seem to happen as much, and as you're saying it, I'm like, the thing that sets you apart, I already know the answer to why you're successful, because you took the time to make relationships. I'm sorry to interrupt your story, but
no. You're so right, and I will do a quick side diatribe, which I like to do. There's no such thing as a ghost kitchen. Ghosts can't cook. There's no such thing as a virtual kitchen. It's an actual kitchen. If it was virtual, you would have cartoon food. Those are dumb buzzwords about something that doesn't exist. And they are also, here's the other big headline, they are not restaurants. Sorry, guys. They are just marketing terms for selling prepared foods. God bless. We want to survive. But, they're what's the word? What is it? What are those initials? BS something? Anyway. So, and by the way, Rick, the whole thing about arugula is really funny. Alice Waters was having friends grow wild arugula, rocket is what they call it, right? Rocket. Wow. In the hills of Berkeley, behind an abandoned house, right? So I kept getting asked, and I kept asking every produce person. And I had a wonderful produce guy, but he would, disappear for 2 or 3 days at a time. So I would have to learn how to take care. Yeah.
Disgorging.
He was lying down facing. Anyway, never mind. And I would have to learn how to take care of every leaf and every mushroom. And these have to be covered with paper towels, and those have to be covered with a damp cloth. And oh my God. And because it was expensive, right? Yeah. So I finally get a case of arugula, broadleaf, dark green, peppery, delicious. Mm-hmm. And it was $18 a pound. And
wow. Back then, that's a lot of money.
A lot of money. And when $1 billion was. Anyway, farmer walks into the Oakville grocery. This is not a joke. And looks at it and goes, oh, I can grow that. It's a weed. And the next year, they were 89 cents a bunch. I mean, bum. Right? So it's not just my making connections, but providing an environment where other connections can happen. And you're right. There was no interwebs. We had to talk to each other and engage each other. And it was important.
You had to be present, and you tasted things and you learned things. That's what the best thing about cheese shops was. But, it was like you could get the scoop from the Baskin and Robbins, I'll slice off a taste. What do you think? And you got to learn and expand your knowledge and taste the world.
Well, but it's also the nature of the food business, as you well know, is I remember I was at lunch at the Russian Tea Room. They were clients of mine. I helped Faith Stewart Gordon, the late Faith Stewart Gordon, kind of sell it to Werner Leroy and all that stuff. But I was sitting.
Let's move it. Let's move beyond the Oakland market because we could talk about it for a longer time.
For a month. Yeah. But I just want to say this. I was at lunch at the Russian Tea Room. We were talking about the possibility of opening a restaurant that I did open with a couple of partners. An hour later, I got a call from a top interior designer wanting to design the restaurant because the busboy had called his friend in Miami, who told his friend in Philadelphia, it's a very small, tight industry. As big as it is. It's the largest industry in the world. The only thing we can't do without. And everybody talks to each other, right?
100%. Absolutely. So
I was running the Oakville grocery. It was wonderful. I was learning from people. Dinah Shore, Mary Martin came in and I sold her black truffles from Perigord when she wanted the $1.25 chocolate ones. I mean, stuff happened, right? And I get this call from James Beard, says Barbara Kafka would like you to come to New York. She can't call you because she does some consulting for Joseph Phelps, your boss. Would you like to come? And I said, you're going to feed me,
Yeah.
So I go to New York to talk to Barbara, and she takes me to the Four Seasons grill room and says, there's Henry Kissinger and there's Arthur Schlesinger. Would you like to move to New York? And I said, are we going to eat here a lot? Right? And so I moved there and I helped her open a very early iteration of a reality that's now common. It was called Star Spangled Foods. What a terrible name for a store. But it was an American food store with specialty artisan foods from all over the country that she painted the colors of Giverny, Monet's Giverny, which is ridiculous. I ran it for a year, paid off the bills and locked the door, and then began consulting. But in those days, Rick, you know this, chefs and chef professors at culinary schools didn't know from wild mushrooms. They didn't know from artisan cheeses. They didn't know from real. So I was giving all these tastings and talks at culinary schools to chef instructors, to Disney World, where they were doing $106 million a year. And when I said I was going to talk about wild mushrooms, they got scared because they thought I was a hippie. You know what I mean? It was a great time.
Yeah.
So I was there for a while. I was doing these tastings. I was traveling around and helping here and there with some retail stuff. And Chris Kimball from Cook's Magazine said, look, we're going to do something called the Who's Who of Cooking in America. We want to acknowledge James Beard and Julia Child and Marcella Hazan and all these legendary people. And we want you to help us have some of the farmers, purveyors. It was just an emerging thing. So I helped them select Laura Chanel for the California goat cheese and the Tsar Nikolai caviar from California. You know what I mean? Jamie Nicholson growing baby lamb, and a guy named Jeff Hivid, who was the forager. I'm telling you, this is in the early 80s,
Yeah,
right?
but you put them on the map.
Well,
All of those companies.
Yeah.
You kickstarted them and made them hip and cool and people you took amazing products. Okay, so you weren't like a snake salesman,
Right.
You were selling like stuff that people needed to know. You knew that, and so you went out there with that kind of confidence and like, you need to have this, and when you taste it, you're like, wow, you're right, I did. You know?
Yeah, and what happened was the first year we were all in the Susan B. Anthony Hall on the Upper East Side, and it was all flat, and there was a little podium of 6 inches, and we couldn't see each other and we couldn't talk. So I went up to Chris Kimball afterwards. I said, great idea, lousy party. And he said something I can't say on a podcast.
He's a Vermonter. He would never say anything terrible.
And anyway, he said, you do it. So for the next 5 years, I organized the Who's Who of Cooking in America Awards. I helped the editorial board select the people. I helped plan the party by starting with the ingredients and the chefs first, right? We did it at the Palladium. Here's a story. The late Craig Claiborne got mad. He came to the Palladium. Larry Forgione was the consulting chef for those guys. So we had the Palladium, and we're talking about Julia Child in the Palladium dance hall. It was hysterical. So Craig comes up to me and he says to me, Wolf, that's what he called me. It was very, very delicate. Wolf, it says cocktails. There's only beer and wine. I want some vodka. Oh, okay. So I go to Steve Rubel, one of the owners. He was the legendary Studio 54 guy, and he goes in his office and he hits the wall. It opens up, and there's a little refrigerator with a big bottle of Stoli. He pours some into a plastic cup and hands it to me and says, "Don't come back." So I go out, I give this glass of vodka to Craig. He takes one big gulp, and then some little old foodie lady hits him in the elbow and knocks it out of his hand.
Oh boy.
And all I can hear as I'm running away is, "Wolf!"
Oh, that is hysterical. And Forgione, oh my God, the whole crew. I almost feel, and it's hard to slow you down because not everybody listening now knows all these names, and they're every one of them are just so important, and they're endearing to me to hear them come up in the conversation. So, but continue with your story. Like now, everybody, Kafka,
Well, I mean,
Beard.
Yeah, here's what happened. First of all, at the Oakville Grocery, I was a nice young guy at a fancy grocery where sophisticated travel people wanted to come.
Mhm.
right? So this wonderful, good-looking, red-haired lady came in, and she said to everybody, "Oh, he's a very nice young man, very helpful." It was Ann Getty. What did I know, right? I mean,
Getty.
right. So when we did the Who's Who, one of the things I learned about New York, and it's true everywhere, is if you want to be successful, be helpful, be useful to other people, help other people. Don't keep things to yourself. Have a spirit of generosity, because when you give things away, more happens, right? And here I was, and again, I was just this guy with a lot of energy who talked too fast, and who wanted to make up. And what I said was, and by the way, this is the precursor, as you know, to the James Beard Awards. What I said was, first we do the awards early and quickly, and then we have a party, because that's what we want. We want to get together and talk to each other and eat and drink and share and giggle and hug and laugh.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we did it at Lincoln Center. We did it at the National Arts Club. I mean, so it set the template for that kind of thing. And 25 years later, like that, boom, they gave me one.
Well, but you deserved it. You deserved it. Listen, so early on in my career, when I sort of started to be, I was asked to be on panels for different reasons, genetically engineered food panels.
Right.
And I mean, I've been on panels with, Betty Fussell and Marion Nestle and, the ladies in power. And, it was, and you're always the moderator. You were great. I mean, there was never a second that needed, there was not an uncomfortable silence moment. It couldn't possibly be with Clark Wolf involved in the moderation, or I don't think I've ever seen you on a panel. You're always like the guy asking the questions.
It's all Ruth Reichel's fault. Ruth Reichel was the legendary. Well, first of all, I met Ruth in San Francisco at the Oakville Grocery. She had hair everywhere,
Of course.
and a wonderful person and part of a family. And she just helped me judge a wonderful writing contest for emerging food writers in the spirit of the late MFK Fisher. And it was interesting. We had this wonderful collection of judges, Harold McGee, I mean, amazing people. And Alice Waters and Ruth Reichel and I all voted the same way on every single story. There's a mentality that we have about food that's east, west, center, heart of the country, and a spirit of forward with a respect to the history that is what I grew up with. You know what I mean? And so I got to know all these people. And here's another connection. And as you say, the women. I met Marion Burroughs,
Mm-hmm.
who was writing for the New York Times at the Oakville Grocery. And she wrote about California cuisine in the Oakville Grocery. We got to be very good friends. And many years later, I was at a book party for one of her books. And there was this other woman I'd met briefly named Marion Nestle. Marion Nestle is this amazing,
It's most brilliant
academic
scientist.
Yes. So we decided we would walk home together from the Upper East Side to Greenwich Village, because that's who we are. Anyway, as we're walking, can you imagine?
You and Marion, I can't imagine.
All right.
I'm going to be the fly on the wall.
Oh, no, you would have been one of the guys at the table, because Marion, as we walked, she said, "Can you help me food up the nutrition department?"
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we got to NYU, we had a plan to develop the country's first food studies program. And it was launched in 11 months by having, I would gather people. We would talk for a couple of hours, really smart people, the late editor Judith Jones, Dorothy Hamilton, who ran the French Culinary Institute, George Faison from D'Artagnan. I mean, all these, Knock Waxman from Kitchen Arts and Letters, really smart people.
Know them all.
And in 1996, we launched the country's, and in fact, in a way, the world's first food studies program, where you could get a BS, a master's, or a PhD in the study of history, culture, sensory evaluation, economics, politics, international relations, biology, chemistry, all these things through the prism of food. And now there are programs all over the world, but there are people with that as a basis, as a BS, a master's, or a PhD, studying so much about culture and about gender and about race, but it's through the prism of the universal, right? And did I get paid for it? Zippo. It was my passion, but has it fueled everything I've done since? Of course.
So you've done a lot. Are you still destitute? Just kidding. Man,
I live in a cabin in the woods. What are you talking about?
So, let's see. American artisan cheese making.
Yeah.
You were involved in cheese making?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. When I did the Oakville grocery, because I'm sorry, Ricky, but a lot of it goes right back to that cheese counter. There was very little available that was made in this country that was really good. There were all kinds of imitation European cheeses from Wisconsin.
Right.
There was a blue cheese up in Oregon that was amazing. But then there was
Everything
this,
from Wisconsin tasted exactly the same at different colors.
and with really faux rustic packaging.
Oh, it's terrible.
You know, if they could take the artistry of the guy who designs that, anyway.
Things
So,
are better in Wisconsin. Anyway.
yeah, there's some very good cheeses. Yeah, yeah. But there was this woman who brought in this fresh goat cheese that we all said, "Oh my God, it tastes like France."
Laura,
And
no.
her name was Laura Chanel, and
Yeah.
she grew up on a turkey farm here in Sonoma County.
Yeah.
And we were, I think, among the first couple of people. There was this one wine and cheese shop that sold it, and then but I brought Laura to New York when I was working with Barbara Kafka. And this is an important lesson about communication and connection. Barbara said, "Sure, you can do an event hosted for Laura Chanel in New York, but it has to be on a Friday," and it was August. Friday in August on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, Rick, 3 people, and they're all sweaty and dirty, right?
Yeah.
Right. We had a party, and there were 8 people who showed up. That was it. However, one of them was Suzanne Hamlin. She wrote for the New York Daily News. She wrote a big piece about Laura Chanel because we had time to talk, and it was in 350 newspapers. And 2 weeks later, everybody in America who cared knew about California. Boom!
And you know what? And what you did is you distributed flavor that they hadn't had before. Because like you said, it tasted like goat cheese from France. Not many people in America have been to France and experienced that. So you brought a new flavor that you know I'm in love with myself. I always have been, but you brought that flavor to America. That's
Well,
great.
and a lot of it has to do with, and then I would talk to people like Laura, you know what I mean? And try to understand it because, Rick, I cook, but I'm not a chef. I've worked with lots of chefs because I'm a grocer. You know what I mean? I actually do care about the food. I care about a Cara orange, and I care about a Meyer lemon. And that's what makes me crazy. That's what makes me happy. The food itself.
You've put up with a lot of chefs. That's what you've done. Good. And you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm afraid I do. And I'm afraid you do too. Well, you know, I always used to joke that I like to work with a chef in their post-jerk phase.
Yeah. So while I was in my jerk phase, you didn't love me. Then we fell in love with each other at some point. I remember that.
Well, you know, here's the deal. You're a great example. I was always very interested in people who had that, whatever it is, you know, that passion, that ability, and also, as I was taught early on, you got the goot. You have the taste in your mouth. You know what real is, and it's not always clear why, but you also translate it to the plate and to the person. You really care about the stuff. When you were in Oceania, I just thought this guy really, you were vibrating. You really, really did care about it. And all the work that we got to do together in Las Vegas always made me very proud, always made me very happy, because I knew you weren't just cooking and slinging food to make some money. You wanted to change the world one plate of food at a time. And it could be a side dish. It's okay with you.
Okay. I have to tell the story.
Okay.
People to understand who this man is. Most of you are probably going, what do you say? What do you say? What do you mean? All those names are legitimate, unbelievable food influencers. And I mean that in a lot of different ways, you know, like the science was coming from Marion Nestle. Barbara Kafka, she was a very well respected journalist. All these names that he's tossing around like really, really mean something. So I'm in New York. My friend Charlie Palmer opened up a restaurant in a casino in Las Vegas called Mandalay Bay, and we're in touch. You know, I've known him for forever. And I'm like, wow, man, he's killing it out there. He's doing a really good job, you know. And he's in the place, and for good reason. The place was astounding and different, and all the things that it needed to be. So I don't know why I'm looking down, because this story is my story. And so I get a phone call from Clark Wolf, who, you know, I'm like, oh, it's Clark Wolf. Wow, you know, hey Clark, how you doing? And he's like, hey Ricky, And he's the only person outside of my immediate family that could possibly who's allowed to call me Ricky. Is Clark Wolf, and so you go, hey Ricky, there's an opportunity in the Mandalay Bay, and so he was consulting with Mandalay Bay, and he's like, these people out here I'm thinking seafood needs to come into Las Vegas. Back in the early 2000, there wasn't really much seafood opportunity on any quality level for sure, other than fried and all the other things, all the other ways that it's been mishandled. And we actually, there's really good seafood available. So Clark goes, would you be interested? And I remember where I was standing when I got that call. I was standing in my restaurant in New York called RM, and Restaurant RM. And I said, sure. Oh, and so I hang up the phone. He introduces me to Yvette Landau and Billy Richardson. Yvette was in charge of legal counsel in Mandalay Bay. And back then, Mandalay Bay was I guess who owned it was Circus. Whatever.
It was those guys. Yeah.
It wasn't MGM owned is really what I'm trying to say. It doesn't matter who owned it. And so things were done more in a family style. So the interest was created through a conversation. And so they flew out individually. Yvette Landau came to my restaurant, sat down, had the time of her life. This is so awesome. And the same thing happened with Bill Richardson with his family on a separate. Bill was real high up. I don't know what his title was. Clark, could you help me with that? Do you remember?
Everybody had a title, but it was, as you say, it was like family. They were Bill Richardson, Billy is his son. Bill Richardson and Mike Ensign were the guys who owned Mike Ensign. They owned Circus, and they were kind of very local guys. And they opened Excalibur. They opened a couple of other ones, but this was going to be $1 billion, and they didn't know how to do it. So they sent their lawyer to New York. I was writing a column for Forbes magazine about restaurants and food in those days. And they came to me and said, we want these 13 restaurants. And I said, well, 12 of them are the wrong ones. But you know what I mean? So I started working with them, and I said to them, American, fun, upbeat, no seafood, no French, no Euro, no 4-star. And we did them all, and they were all successful. Charlie Palmer was one of the first ones. And they called me and they said, he wants us to throw out $400,000 worth of design development and put in a $2 million wine tower. Is that a good idea? And we'll remember what you tell us in a year. And I said, I asked him some questions. Is that natural light or is that fake light? We got to make sure we don't hurt the wine.
It's Adam Tahani.
It was brilliant. And they got all kinds of
Tahani.
So the second run was when I called you and they said, okay, Clark, come back and help us do I said, it's got to be, you should add seafood, but it's got to be sweet. It's got to be warm. It's got to be friendly, and it's got to be Rick. And that's how that happened. So they came and look, I sent them all to you, and they saw the same thing I did. They saw a guy who could really cook and who was excited about every leaf and scale.
And then they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. No, but the real deal. Okay, and this is just kind of like that's the most amazing thing there, and that's the reason I moved to Las Vegas. But I've never been in Vegas. I'm like, okay, this is interesting, but it's scary for me. A lot of restaurants that I tried out subsequently weren't as good as I thought they should be. I thought I was in a barren world, and then I met Bradley Ogden and the crew that was within there, and my everything changed. Hold on. But what I want to say is, he's like, I'm going to introduce you to the people you need to know in this town now.
Yeah.
And that's how deep he goes on consulting with you. He doesn't just leave you high and dry. Okay, I made the introduction. We're done. And, and actually that wasn't really, we weren't working on a consultant deal. That was friendship. Complete friendship and connective, just connecting. But he's telling me, you got to meet, Muriel Stevens.
Oh yeah.
Right. You told me. And then you're like Max, and you set up a meeting for Max Jacobson before he owned up to try the chowder, because he was from New England, and he took one bite of the chowder, looked up at me, and he's like, "You're going to be all right." And Robin Leach, I knew Robin from New York from when he started Food Network, but you reconnected us, and I was set for life now. All I have to do is what I do and do it right, and have the support of the 3 people you get. And that's like, you gave me like the silver, I was in this padded cushion of comfort going into a brand new place I'd never been in, scared, and it all just became, for me, a change.
Well, and let's face it, you worked your butt off. I mean, let's not be any, let's be very, very clear about that. When I first got to Las Vegas, there was almost no place I could eat, and I had been there, but I found out, because I was working at a Loews hotel at the Loews Ventana Canyon Resort, and we were trying to do something in Coronado, and we went to Las Vegas to find a chef. James Boyce is who he was, and he was at Caesars in the High Rollers dining room that nobody could see.
Right.
And so we had this amazing meal, and I said to everybody, "See, you can get anything in Vegas. They just don't want to." When we did Mandalay Bay, I said to them, California is right there. Go get it. And I swear to you, within about a year of my starting to work in Las Vegas, it wasn't coming from Texas anymore. It wasn't coming from Europe anymore. It was coming from, and Vegas is closer to more farms in California than San Francisco or Los Angeles.
Hallelujah.
It's in the middle.
100%.
It's in the, right. And because you had the knowledge, it would come, seafood would come in from either Los Angeles port or the Seattle port, Vancouver. But you have to know. And that's what I learned in the cheese shop is if you know something and you ask, somebody's going to say, "Oh, I can get you that. Oh, what is it like?" When we did the Loews Miami Beach Hotel, the local swordfish was mushy and tasteless. So I started flying it in from a New York distributor, and the local guy got better really quick. That's what happens. You have to lift all the boats. Right, Rick?
Yeah, absolutely, man. And that mentality is what's made you successful.
Well, I want to mention something else. It's really important. At this time, when I was with after Oakville, and I was just getting to New York, I was involved in something that Robert Mondavi and Julia Child started with Dick Chalone, who was at Chalone Vineyards, Dick Graff at Chalone Vineyards, and it was called the American Institute of Wine and Food.
Yeah, AIWF.
AIWF. I started the New York chapter, which became the largest in the country. And I would do these conferences, again, all pro bono, all volunteer, where we would gather for 3.5 days. But I spent a year going around the country to learn about that topic, to know who to invite. So the point is, it was really a process of learning how to learn and learning how to let people come together to make it more than the sum of its parts.
But we were so fortunate to have your knowledge sent to us in the manner in which only you could do. Truly, because I remember everything you said. Because your charisma and your confidence and your, you weren't nice to chefs sometimes. I would sit up there and I go, well, how could he say that about chefs? Blanket statement. And I think about it, I was like, shit, he's right.
I was on a panel with Michael Batterberry. Folks, if you don't know who that was, Michael Batterberry started Food and Wine Magazine and Food Arts. Amazing, kind of semi-academic, really brilliant, talented, wonderful, generous man.
A mensch,
a real mensch. He invited me onto a panel, and it was when Anthony Bourdain's first book, Kitchen Confidential, came out. And I had said some things in print where I said very early on, this should be a cautionary tale, not a career plan. And we're on the panel, and Tony and I and a couple other people, and it gets to the question and answer period. And Tony's, somebody in the audience says, "It says in your book, you should never order fish on a Monday night." And I said, "I want to answer that. You should never order fish in his restaurant on a Monday night." And they scream, because it's not that he wasn't telling the truth. It's that he was telling the truth in a very limited way with a very limited purpose, which was to get a reaction. But the fact is, in a lousy restaurant, they might get a delivery on Friday, and not know how to take care of it. The fact is, Rick, it depends not just how it comes out of the water, but how it's handled, and how it's handled all the way through. Frankly, somebody, you and I know there are chefs where Monday is a good day because they went fishing on Saturday. They went fishing on Sunday, and that, but if you're a crap restaurant buying off the back of the truck, yes, don't buy fish on Monday night from his restaurant. Bless his heart.
Absolutely right. But it created an interest, though, of raw stories, real stories.
Yep.
I did a podcast with David Burt. Guess what you get out of him?
Stories.
And they're not always for the the family listeners kind of ish, but it's real. It's what it is.
Well, I did. All right. So I finished with that stuff with Barbara Kafka in New York, and a guy named Dr. Joseph Santo
Yeah.
got me basically through John Mariani, the food writer who was then writing for Esquire.
How's Joe related to Henny?
That's his sister-in-law.
Sister-in-law.
I'll tell you that. This is a great story. So Joe hires me he said he has this place called Stemperol 206, and it looks like the inside of a Tyrolean cave, but he's always wanted to do something from the Southwest. And I'm from California, so can I help him do something called Arizona 206, named after Arizona Highways, the magazine he read as a kid.
Yeah, I remember those. We got those at home.
I took him all over the country, all over the West, to taste things. And at the end, I did a yellow and an orange marking pen on a big white piece of paper, Arizona 206, New York City. And I said, now we'll take this to a graphic artist. And he said, nah, I paid you. And we got this new thing, Rick, color Xerox. 1985,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, I remember that.
Right?
Big machines.
And suddenly, my handwriting is on an awning in a restaurant in New York and in a full-page ad in Interview magazine. We brought Brendan Walsh because I had tasted his food, and Judy Rogers from the Zuni Cafe, the late great chef, said he really could cook, and I had tasted his food in a failed restaurant in New Jersey, but the kid could cook, and we gave him the ingredients. Oh my God.
Tremendous.
But he didn't understand, and he was afraid of me, fast-talking, Armani-wearing, California crazy. So we just gave him what he needed, and we did Arizona 206, and then he wanted me to help him with
contrapunto.
Well, he wanted me to help Dr. Santo wanted me to help him with his original restaurant from the 60s, the Sign of the Dove.
Yeah, around the corner.
Oh my God, it had been called the Black Widow, the restaurant New Yorkers love to hate.
Oh shit.
The hookers needed renovation. Let me tell you, right? So we're working on this, and I'm in an office with Joe, and I said, Joe, why don't we let your brother Burge and his wife Henny, who's a hoot, why don't we let them?
Henny,
Clark.
Hey, do you see on Instagram, like every day she's in a new
I know, but God bless.
Always staring off in the sun.
Off into the past.
Anyway, love Henny.
She's very dear. And I said to Joe, why don't you let Henny and Burge, you come once a week to run the business, the company, but get out of the business. Get out of this. You're suffocating the place. You've been here too much. Let us redo it and let us have a new, fresh generation. And he looks at me like he's going to hit me. And he says to me, you're firing me from my own restaurant? and I said, Joe, you've tried everything else. Give us a couple of months. We got 3 stars in the New York Times from unsatisfactory to 3 stars.
I couldn't wait to go. I remember, I know the whole place inside and out. I loved it.
Well, and the thing is that it wasn't enough. I mean, this is the other thing. This is a time when the world of food was so small. He knew an amazing woman here in the San Francisco Bay Area who just passed away at over 100, Cecilia Chang, who really brought fine Chinese food to America. And so I invited Cecilia, along with Joe, to do a Chinese New Year's dinner in the middle of the Sign of the Dove to exorcise the lousy food and history, to prove that you could make good food in this building. You know what I mean? Because saging wasn't enough, right?
It scared away the bad food.
It scared away. And then when I started doing the Cooks Magazine Who's Who, we started the first after party. And I'll never forget when Andy D'Amico, the chef of the Dove, made a wild mushroom broth in a little demi-tasse, and the late Jean-Louis Paladin sipped it and said in his inimitable way, "Oh, essay," you know what I mean?
Merde.
Oh, merde, this guy can cook. I mean, that was the kind of thing. There was a time when if Jean-Louis Paladin or Jacques Pepin or, if somebody like that said, "Oh, yes," you know what I mean? Now it's everybody who's 23 years old and who cooked a waffle. But, and frankly, I think we're going to come out of that. I honestly think that we're moving forward where we respect chefs and cooks much more, but we want a whole lot more than just, the latest.
Who's going to carry that integrity?
Well, I got to tell you, this last year has been good for that, because there's been a real difference. And I honestly have to say, there are those people who are opening chicken sandwich places every 3 feet, and there's those people who really care. I get my food from a place in a nearby town where they also get me a farm bag from their farm garden. The relationships we're building now in this very difficult, challenging time are going to last. They're going to last forever. Look, we're talking, right?
No, but I'm connecting to farmers now. I harvested a lamb. I got 150-pound lamb Friday, you know, and me and a really close friend of mine, with total respect, thank you to the animal, we harvested it, hung it, dried, pulled it out. It's the most amazing flavors and textures I've ever had in my life. Now I get what Jean-Louis Paladin was talking about when he came to America, that the influence he had. You know, we can't let that go, and it has to continue.
And we have to redouble our efforts, because I mean, when I came to New York, a regular coffee in New York was in a blue and white paper cup from a deli. It was burnt. It was thin. It had 2 sugars and milk. It was terrible. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. The porcelain version, right?
Yeah.
Right. I've got one. Yeah. Right. There it is. Yeah. There it is. You're right.
We're happy to serve you.
That ceramic might be from the Tenement Museum.
And how you shake it, right? You put your finger.
Yeah, right. But that's because but New York did know some really amazing things, right? There's just been a big controversy in the New York Times or around the New York Times because their California restaurant and food critic, Tejal Rayo, who I enormously respect, just said she found better bagels in California than in New York. Whoa!
No, you don't. No, you just shot one over the bow, baby.
So I think we have a whole new generation of writers, a whole new generation of chefs. I'm all for it. I've continued to do the Zoom Critical Topics in Food series with NYU and Marion Nestle via the library there on Zoom. We had 250 people recently talking about multiculturalism in nutrition and dietetics, talking about the recalibration of the restaurant business. We have to keep having these serious conversations with a light heart, you know, and great hope, and welcome new generations. Because when I was a 20-something kid, those elders in food and farming and cooking and restaurants welcomed and were generous to me because they wanted the future to have something good to eat. And because that's how it works.
And that's what you hold. That's what you embrace. So tell me about At the Table with Clark Wolf. That's your baby at the moment, right? Because you've had so many things, it's hard to keep track. Truthfully.
Well, here's the thing. I've been writing for Forbes.com a lot less because so much of what's being written I don't care about. So I only write periodically. Yeah. It's now called At the Table with Clark Wolf because Marcy Smothers went off to write books about Disneyland and Walt Disney's recipes. And we did it for a couple of years now. I've been doing it. I wanted to do something local, regional, you know, that was very focused. So I do talk to a farmer or a guy who's got a new produce market or a cheesemaker, or sometimes if I can get him a goat, you know, but I also have talked to Harold McGee on my show and Pete Wells from the New York Times on my show. So I want to keep the conversation going because I need to keep, you know, that spot between my ears going. And then I'm working on the old AT&T building. Remember the old AT&T building on Madison? Yeah. So I'm helping those people develop a restaurant and an amenity floor. I'm helping with to maybe bring back Schraff's. Can you imagine, Rick? Schraff's in New York City. I'm working with Hilton hotels all over the country right now, a little bit more remotely, helping them put in marketplaces, like coffee bar marketplaces where they're selling artisan goods. And in this pandemic, it's been very helpful at the Del Coronado, at the Arizona Biltmore, at the Grand Wailea. So I'm doing a lot of things to make a living, and also because I just love them. It's about bringing food.
I learned about the Del, the Hotel Del Coronado at in San Diego. You remember there was a revamping of the concept of the main dining room, and I went in and did a dinner. It was a rough one, but there was a miscommunication. But the memories I have with you, the different things that we've got to do in life, are just so dear. But I'm gonna have to shift here for a second.
Sure.
New direction, and I have to ask you a question. How much fish are you eating nowadays?
It's a really interesting question because I live 8 miles from the water, right? Mm-hmm. So when it is Dungeness crab season, I'm a very happy boy, right? And I don't mind if they wait until the whales are gone. I don't want to kill everybody. I treasure it. You know what I mean? When I do have tuna, which I love, it's usually in a tin in olive oil, caught by somebody thoughtfully. And to me, it's the center of the meal. Do you know what I mean? I think that seafood, really good seafood, is one of those things that gives restaurants a purpose for being, because not just the quality of the fish, but the whole effort to take care of it and to bring it perfectly, to gentle it to perfection the way you chefs do. Alfred Portali used to talk about that. You coax the flavor out of seafood. It's one of those things that I often will order at a restaurant because it's not something that I do perfectly at home. But it's always been a very important part of my life. And it was great to move to New York because in California, we have many fewer species. We have a really long coast, but there are less to choose from. So living in New York, I got to taste all these things, and the Oyster Bar and all those wonderful places. But I will tell you this, on a fairly regular basis, I make the pilgrimage to Bodega Bay, to a place called Spuds Point that makes some of the best chowder I've ever had in my life. We got a Dungeness crab sandwich and a bucket of chowder, and stand out with the sea air hitting us and just be happy.
We're going to do that together, man, because I miss you so much.
As soon as we can all get our shots and start traveling again, you got to come for a visit and we'll go down there. I remember taking Dan Barber all through this area. He was out visiting and I made him come up here and ride around with me in Sonoma County to see some farms and meet some old farmers. And it was really, it was because I live here in part because it's like living in Italy or the south of France 100 years ago. You know what I mean? The neighbors are cranky, and there's some really good farms, and it's precious.
And you get great coffee real close by.
Oh my God! Coffee, bread, strawberries, asparagus.
And I'm like sipping coffee the whole time. I'm happy.
It's all about espresso for me. What can I tell you? I think my blood is brown, but as long as it's really good. And many years ago when Marion Burroughs wrote in the New York Times about California cuisine, we used to jokingly say, yes, here's the secret. Get great ingredients and try not to mess them up.
That's the Italian approach. Serious. In Italy, you get great products and you get out of the way. Yep. Balance it. I got to talk with David Pasternak.
David.
Has recently closed Esca, and he's such a sweetheart of a guy. The real.
He brought crudo to America. He brought people eating raw fish that wasn't sushi, that have maybe a little drizzle of oil on it and some lemon and a little bit of sea. That was my neighborhood. I was living for many years. The last 11 years, I've lived on 42nd Street, if you can imagine, west of 11th Avenue.
Yeah.
In a place called Silver Towers on the 10th floor, looking at the Empire State Building and the water.
I know exactly where you were. Exactly.
Well, but the thing is this, I will tell you, I would.
You're down the block from the West Bank Cafe.
Yes, absolutely. I would walk a lot and exercise a lot, and I loved to be with people. But I would wait to get to California to eat, because honestly, you know how many pairs of hands it goes through before it gets in your mouth in New York City, approximately. Do you know this?
16.
15. They say, yeah. Look at you. They say that it goes through, and here I can have produce that goes through the farmer's hands and mine. It's unbelievable. Or maybe the farmer's hands, the grocer's hands and mine.
It's a special fantasy place that you live in. You do, and we love it. We love it. You connect to it. You connect to everything. You always have. No matter what, you get thrown in a stinky cheese shop and you go, I don't know crap. And next thing you know, you're writing a book talking about it. And you know every little living thing there is to know about it. You are such a brain trust to me. You always have been. You're my brain trust. I know if I call you, I'm going to get an answer. It's like sometimes, I'm going to hold the phone away for a second. Okay, yeah, there's a little bit of energy going on here, and it always makes me smile. It always makes me smile. So, I've taken an hour of your time, and I didn't talk about Forever Ocean. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the company that I'm working with. They are an aquaculture company. And I found aquaculture go from a really ugly state to a much better state. Yes. And I call myself the Trojan chef now. I get to be involved in companies that are coming out. So the product's not even available to the public till later this year. We're going to send you a couple of fish because you put up with me on a podcast.
I'd love that.
So you can play with them. Get some, if you don't know how to fillet a fish, get somebody to do it. Take a video of it. Have fun with it. You, Clark Wolf, with a knife hacking at a fish. I mean, we want to see it.
Yeah.
Seriously, because it makes you real. Because you are real. You're a real person who I love personally and professionally. So and they're doing it right. They're you know me. I've been studying this stuff for 13 years. Not studying it. I mean, it's part of it became an interest of mine.
You've been living it, Rick. You've been living it. You've been living it. You've been breathing it. And you are one of those people who, if you say to me, there's an aquaculture company doing it right, I'm done. That's it. I trust you. And that's what we have to have. We can't just have the next thing. We've got to have people we trust.
Yeah, I'm not going to hoodwink your ass. This is good stuff. And I tasted the fish already because we're starting to get the internal samples to say, okay, how do we stand up against the competition? You got to set your price. You got to set the thing. What are you going to do with it? You want to do all the good things you possibly can. And it's exciting to be there at this part. It's coming, guys. It's coming.
It's coming.
Forever Oceans, Kahala. It's an amberjack, and it's like, it's delicious. And to work with my knife, it's like something butter. It's like beautiful. That's coming up. We're going to be doing grouper. They're going to be doing, a red snapper. Maybe I'm going to try to influence to do, some kind of like cobia, because I think cobia's a delicious fish to work with. Yeah. And you don't see it regularly because they're individual swimmers, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, that's what I get to do. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention. You're going to get some, who knows? We always figure out a way. Somehow, after you're going to get this fish, the next day you're going to get a call. I'm going to go, no, you know what? I need your advice on some seafood direction that the world is going in.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. What I'm going to do, actually, it's already prepared. There's a guy called Dan Kadan. He's one of the best cooks I've ever met in my life. He has a place called Backyard, which is where it tastes like the food grew out there. And he opened up Ad Hoc for Thomas Keller. He's done a lot of different stuff. He's one of those rare, incredible cooks. He also teaches at the Culinary Institute in St. Helena. And when the fish comes, I'm going to call Dan and I'm going to say, okay, I'm coming over with a fish from Rick Moonen.
No. I'll send it directly to him.
Well, and we'll cook it together. Yeah, that's true.
However you want to do it, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. And he'll get some leaves from his garden and some citrus from his garden, and some chili oil that he's been aging for 40 years. You know what I mean? And we'll do something.
That's perfect. Please just have somebody video it.
Please try to stop us, right? I mean, my God.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. See what I know, man. That's been super cool. I'm going to tell you goodbye right now, but it's not goodbye ever to me. Until I talk to you soon again, my friend. I love you with all my heart.
I love you too, Rick. Thank you so much for taking the time and for catching up. It's great to see your smiling face.
Back at you, my friend. Have a good day.